In today's digital world, silence is often mistaken for guilt. And for many men, especially fathers, that silence is not chosen freely. It is enforced by fear, by stigma, and by a system that rarely allows them to speak without consequence. Today's discussion centers on Andrew Prince Jr., also known as Narry, a father who says he was pushed into the public eye not by ambition, but by necessity. This is not a story about internet drama. It is not about gossip. And it is not about choosing sides. This is a story about why someone who stayed quiet for months finally decided to speak, and what that decision reveals about human behavior, online culture, and how quickly narratives harden when only one voice is heard. Narry Prince begins his live session by doing something many people never expect a man to do publicly. He introduces himself calmly. He states his purpose plainly, and he explains why he is here. Not for clout, not for revenge, but because, in his words, the lies became too heavy to carry alone. Narry explains that the catalyst for this public moment was not something he initiated, but something that was done to him. A campaign, he says, was launched against him online by his son's mother, Sheena Dixon. What triggered it? According to Narry, the incident began when Alicia Kim attended Narry's father's funeral. A moment that should have been about grief, closure, and family. Instead, Narry says it became the spark for an online narrative that painted him as something he says he is not. One of the most disturbing claims Narry makes is not simply that allegations were made, but that they were for sale. He states that his son's mother allegedly requested $700 US to give interviews about him. This detail matters, because once accusations become monetized, they stop being personal grievances and become content. And in the modern internet economy, outrage is currency. Narry frames this moment as a turning point. The realization that silence no longer protected him. Psychologically, this is critical. When someone believes accusations will fade if ignored, they often choose restraint. But when accusations become profitable, silence becomes permission. Narry emphasizes something repeatedly. His relationship with Sheena ended 6 years ago. Yet he describes her behavior as if the relationship never ended. Emotionally, narratively, or psychologically. This is a pattern experts recognize as unresolved attachment conflict, where separation does not result in emotional disengagement. Narry is not just addressing a breakup. He is addressing a rewriting of history, where past intimacy is used to justify present hostility. And crucially, he points out that the public often does not question timelines, they question tone. A calm accuser is believed. A defensive man is doubted. Narry then introduces another figure, Krista, the mother of his daughter and alleged ex-wife. He alleges that she too spread false narratives about him. But here's where Narry makes one of his most revealing observations. He believes both women felt safe lying because they believed he would never speak. This speaks to a broader social truth. Silence is often interpreted as admission, not because it is logical, but because it is convenient. Narry explains that for months, he chose not to respond publicly, believing that truth didn't need a microphone. What he discovered is that in the age of algorithms, truth without amplification disappears. At around the 7-minute mark of the original live, Narry says something simple. The lies became too much. This is not a dramatic statement. It's an exhausted one. Psychologically, this moment reflects what's known as identity overload. When a person's public identity becomes so distorted that remaining silent begins to feel like self-erasure. Narry explains that his channel exists for one primary reason: to tell the side of the story that never gets platformed, especially the stories of men labeled as deadbeat fathers without evidence. Narry directly challenges one of society's most entrenched assumptions, that if a father is absent, it is because he chose to be. He questions why fathers are told to fight to see their children, but mothers are rarely told to stop blocking access. This reframing is uncomfortable, which is precisely why it matters. Narry is not claiming perfection. He is claiming inconsistency in judgment. And this is where human behavior plays a central role. People prefer simple villains. Complex systems don't trend. One of the most revealing aspects of Narry's livestream isn't just what he says. It's how people respond. Comment sections are not neutral spaces. They are emotional ecosystems. Some viewers immediately express support, saying things like, "I believe you," Men never get a chance to speak. This happens more than people want to admit. Others react with skepticism. Why come forward now? There's always two sides. Men always play victim. These reactions are not random. They reflect pre-existing belief systems, not necessarily the evidence presented. Psychologists call this confirmation bias, the tendency to accept information that supports what we already believe and reject what challenges it. A recurring theme in critical comments is timing. Why now? If this happened months ago, why speak today? This question sounds logical, but it often ignores human reality. People do not speak when they are comfortable. They speak when silence becomes unbearable. Narry explains that he stayed quiet for months because he believed addressing the accusations publicly would only escalate conflict, especially where children were involved. This aligns with behavioral research. Parents often suppress their own narratives to avoid worsening custody or co-parenting tensions. Ironically, the very restraint meant to protect children is later weaponized as evidence of guilt. Narry makes a controversial but important claim that society increasingly treats accusations as convictions. This does not mean accusations should be dismissed. It means they should be examined, not absorbed automatically. Human beings rely on moral shortcuts to navigate complex situations quickly. If a story fits a familiar template, abusive man, suffering woman, absent father, the brain fills in the rest. This is not malice. It's cognitive efficiency, but efficiency often sacrifices fairness. Narry's frustration stems from being placed into a role before evidence was weighed, and discovering that once assigned, that role is almost impossible to escape. When men speak publicly about parental struggles, their credibility is often evaluated differently. Anger is interpreted as aggression. Emotion is interpreted as manipulation. Calmness is interpreted as calculation. Narry speaks firmly, sometimes passionately, and critics label that tone as defensive. Supporters label it as exhausted. The same behavior is interpreted two completely different ways, depending on the viewer's worldview. This is a core concept in social psychology. Perception is shaped more by expectation than reality. Narry challenges one of the most damaging social labels a man can carry: deadbeat father. Once applied, this label rarely requires evidence to persist. It implies financial irresponsibility, emotional absence, moral failure. Narry argues that the label ignores systemic realities: restricted access, legal barriers, gatekeeping by the other parent. He asks a question many commenters avoid. Why are fathers told to fight harder, instead of asking why access is blocked in the first place? This question makes people uncomfortable because it disrupts a moral hierarchy that feels settled. As Nari's story circulates, the comment section splits into predictable camps. Supporters see him as a silenced father, a man finally reclaiming his voice, someone speaking for others who can't. Critics see him as defensive, self-serving, controlling the narrative. What's important is not which side is right, but how quickly certainty forms without full information. This is the anatomy of online polarization. Nuance dies first. Context follows. Online platforms reward emotional clarity, not complexity. Algorithms amplify outrage, not reflection. Nari's story forces viewers to confront uncomfortable possibilities. That accusations can be exaggerated. That fathers can be obstructed. That truth can be messy. Many people reject discomfort by choosing certainty. Choosing a side feels safer than sitting with ambiguity. By going public, Narry knowingly exposes himself to judgment. Support doesn't erase criticism. Visibility doesn't guarantee fairness. But from his perspective, controlled exposure is better than unchecked narrative spread. He is no longer silent, and silence was costing him everything. Parental alienation occurs when one parent deliberately interferes with the child's relationship with the other parent. Can look like withholding access, restricting communication, speaking negatively about the other parent, creating fear or distrust where none existed. Narry describes behaviors that align with these patterns. His son being denied contact with him. His father being blocked from seeing his grandson. His son's passport being withheld. Alienation does not require physical violence. It works quietly through repetition and control. One of the most dangerous aspects of parental alienation is how difficult it is to document. There are rarely witnesses. The actions are framed as protection. Intent is hidden behind concern. Narry explains that this reality forced him to become meticulous. He documents court interactions, messages, missed exchanges, financial and legal costs. This is not paranoia. It is survival in a system that demands proof from the parent with less access. Narry recounts how his son's passport was withheld in 2024, preventing travel and access. This is a critical example of bureaucratic control. No shouting, no public scene, just denial. To regain access, Narry says he was forced to pursue an emergency court order, costing him millions in Jamaican dollars. This illustrates a hard truth many parents face. Justice is often available, but only to those who can afford it. Family courts are designed to be neutral, but neutrality does not always mean fairness. Courts rely heavily on existing custody status, who has physical control, who appears more stable on paper. Narry counters allegations that he lacks stability by stating he has a fixed address. His daughter lives with him. Yet once a narrative is established, reversing it becomes difficult. Courts are slow. Narratives spread fast. One of the most serious moments Narry describes is receiving threats to his life during a 2025 attempt to pick up his son. He believes these threats were connected to his son's mother. Whether or not authorities confirm this, the psychological impact is undeniable. Fear is a powerful deterrent. When a parent fears for their safety, access becomes dangerous, not absent by choice but by necessity. Narry repeatedly returns to one central concern: the child. Research consistently shows that children benefit from having both parents present, emotionally, socially, and developmentally. When one parent is erased or vilified, children may experience confusion, loyalty conflicts, anxiety, identity struggles. Narry's long-term concern is not winning an argument. It is preventing his son from growing up with a distorted understanding of his father. Narry explains that he sends all documentation, messages, court filings, evidence to an email account created for his son. This is not about persuasion. It is about preservation. He wants his son, when old enough, to see consistency, effort, truth over time. This approach reflects a long-term mindset, one that prioritizes future understanding over immediate validation. Narry makes a statement that draws strong reactions, that not all women who give birth are true mothers. This is not a denial of maternal love. It is a critique of behavior. He argues that when hatred for the father outweighs love for the child, parenting becomes compromised. This statement unsettles people because it challenges a sacred assumption that motherhood is inherently selfless. But Narry frames it as a behavioral observation, not a moral attack. Narry's platform, as he describes it, is not just about his case. It is about fathers afraid to speak, systems slow to protect, children caught in silence. He plans to interview psychologists, fathers, mothers, adults raised in single-parent homes. His aim is to broaden the conversation, not narrow it. For decades, people were advised, don't respond. The truth will come out. That advice assumes a slow, thoughtful public. The internet is neither. Silence in digital spaces is interpreted as avoidance, guilt, confirmation. Narry describes realizing that by staying quiet, others were speaking for him, shaping how strangers, acquaintances, and even family perceived him. This is not ego. This is identity defense. One of the most emotionally charged moments Narry references is the live stream of his father's funeral. He states that this live stream was used for drama and online speculation, turning a moment of grief into spectacle. In response, Narry pulled the stream down. This moment represents a breaking point. When grief becomes content, boundaries collapse. And when boundaries collapse, people either retreat completely or speak loudly enough to reclaim control. Narry chose the latter. Narry repeatedly frames his actions around one audience: his son. Not today, not tomorrow, but years from now. By documenting everything and preserving evidence, Narry is creating a time-delayed conversation, one that allows his son to encounter his father's truth without mediation. Legacy is not about reputation. It is about record. And in an era where misinformation lasts forever, preservation becomes an act of love. Narry's story resonates because it taps into a widespread but under-discussed experience. Many men report being discouraged from speaking emotionally, being assumed wrong by default in family disputes, being told to just move on from children they are blocked from seeing. Narry's platform gives language to a pain that is usually private. Not all viewers agree with him, but many recognize the pattern. Recognition creates community. One of Narry's most challenging arguments is his warning against absolute belief without evidence. This does not mean disbelief. It means discernment. When societies move from listening to deciding, due process erodes not only legally but socially. Narry's fear is not criticism. It is erasure. Narry ends his live session by inviting people to subscribe, not as fans but as witnesses. He promises continued documentation, interviews with experts, conversations that include multiple perspectives. This is not closure. It is continuation. Once a narrative is public, it must be maintained, or it will be overwritten again. Narry's decision to start a YouTube channel was not impulsive. It was cumulative. It came after months of silence, escalating accusations, public monetization of claims, legal battles, threats, and the realization that quiet integrity no longer protects anyone. His story forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. Who gets believed and why? When does silence become self-harm? And how much truth is lost when only one side speaks? This discussion is not about choosing a hero or a villain. It is about understanding the human cost of unchecked narratives. It is about recognizing that behind every accusation is a child, a family, and a future shaped by what is said and what is left unsaid. Narry came forward because silence failed him. Whether one agrees with him or not, his decision reflects a broader truth of our time. In the digital age, truth must be spoken, or it will be replaced.